All right, as Abdul has suggested this morning, our first discussion will be an update on the recent flood that occurred in the Trademore estates that sacked many residents from their place of abode and swept away their properties, and the accusations and counter-accusations between the residents of the estate and officials of the FCT. The chairman of Trademore Resident Association, Otumba Adewale Adedaike, is in our studios to give us an update. Good morning, Otumba.
Doctor.
Good morning to you.
Well, I guess each of the titles will go. Dr. Otumba, which is the most preferable?
Engineer.
Oh, engineer.
The man with so many,
so many
caps.
titles, so many caps. Please bring us to speed with what has been happening at the Trademore estate, largely because at some point after the incident, the FCDA said that place has been declared a disaster zone. And the community came back and said, this is not a disaster zone. And we understand bulldozers were deployed. We saw some images of bulldozers trying to excavate or deepen the water channels. And there have been all kinds of forth and back. People don't know what to believe. Can you please bring us to speed with what exactly is happening in Trademore as we speak this morning?
Thank you so much. And I'm grateful for inviting us to give you our own side of the story. What should you believe? You should believe the truth. And whatever you hear from me, you can take it to the bank. Because I'm the chairman of the estate. I'm the spokesperson for the estate. I'm chairman phase 3. Now, the estate was built about 15 years ago. And there was no incidence of flooding all the way through to 2014. That's about 8 years later. At the time Trademore was built, there were no other estates, or there were few estates in the area. As we speak, we have about 74 other estates around Trademore. Now, you don't need a degree in engineering to understand that when it rains, water percolates into the soil. When you develop that land area, water will find its way. A lot of water we find in the area are purely surface water. And then you also have water coming from different areas of Abuja, heading towards Lugbe. So really, this is about Lugbe flood, not Trademore flood. Now, before I go on regarding that, let me quickly correct something. No one who lives in Trademore has ever lost his life as a result of flood. So let's make that abundantly clear.
The situation with the lecturer, from Modibo Adama University in Yola, was that not from the incident 2 weeks ago?
We've had various people who died there, right? The man from Adamawa does not live, or rather he didn't live in Trademore, okay? He came to carry out some work and he was leaving and he got swept by the flood. Other bodies we've discovered in the past are bodies brought by the flood into the estate, through the estate. But nobody who is a resident of Trademore has ever lost his or her life in that flood. Now, let me explain to you. So, we have waters coming from the 9 districts towards Trademore. We have water coming from Lokogoma, Piakasa, Aleita, all heading for Trademore. What we found from our inspection, graciously, Senator Ereti, who is representing the Federal Capital Territory right now, and the member of the House of Rep for our side, Honorable Chinedu, both came and they had inspection. Don't forget, Senator Ereti is also a civil engineer. She saw what was happening, and she also made it abundantly clear that demolition is not the answer. What needs to be done is majorly outside of Trademore, not in Trademore. Now, like I said, this incident first happened in 2014, and we had a meeting with all the government agencies, FEMA, Development Control, FCT, FCDA, and all. And we came out with proposal of what can be done to eliminate all of this. But Development Control has no other agenda apart from demolition, including FCDA. I, as a flood specialist, told them that you do not need demolition. What you need is flood control. And the lazy approach to engineering is demolition. But in Nigeria, it's sad what we've been seeing, that people at the helm of affairs tend to get away with a lot of things, because in other climes, these people have lost their jobs.
Dr. Adewale, is it fair for people to make the observation that they say, okay, you could perhaps be conflicted at this point because you are an engineer, so you do know your stuff, and you know what you're talking about. However, you're also a resident, so that gives you the incentive to discourage the idea of demolition, even if it's necessary.
I'm not discouraging the need for demolition. They came and demolished about 51 houses last year. We didn't discourage them. I only told them as an expert that it will create further problems. And it did. Because the flood of this year was unprecedented as a result of the demolition of last year. And if you don't deal with the source of the water, if you don't actually deal with flood, flood will deal with you. And that's exactly what is happening. The problem in the estate is from outside of the estate. So it's beyond our own developer. Therefore, government agencies need to get up and do the needful. A lot of estates outside of Trademore, a lot of them are on flood path. They actually diverted the water. We have all the records. We've done inspections. Not because I'm a resident. I said, look, the houses there are well over 2,000, right? It won't affect my home at all because I'm about 8 meters above the level where it's been flooded, right? Where my own house is situated. The point is this, it's not about that. It's about an injury to one is an injury to all.
Okay, so let's narrow down to Trademore.
Yes.
Why is Trademore such an important epicenter in this whole narrative? What has happened that has... You talked about collecting water from about 8 districts. Is Trademore the lowest point in all of this channel? Or, like you rightly mentioned, what did you identify that can then free up what we are seeing in Trademore?
Okay. First of all, why Trademore? Trademore is the largest private estate in this country. There's no other estate that has those number of units in the whole of Nigeria that is private. People talk about Gwarimpa. Gwarimpa is government. Okay. So let's put that. That's why the attention is there. Second attention is location. Trademore is on an important road in the Federal Capital Territory. Okay. Thirdly, Trademore land is very important to the leaders or to the managers of FCDA. Therefore, at the time this place was allocated to the developer, there was no FCDA. It was simply AMAC. So at that time, AMAC had the right of allocation and approval, right? Of course, things changed over time. They're not talking about harmonization and revalidation and all of that. That is their own business. That does not take away the legality of...
Is it though, doctor? Is it their business, not your business? Because at the end of the day, we had this executive secretary speak to our reporters and he said, you people in Trademore don't have the certification of the FCDA to pretty much build in that location. Okay. And that's why they have the right to classify it a danger zone.
Okay. In a better environment, he should have lost his job on that day when he made that pronouncement.
But is he right though?
He was not right. And
do you have FCDA certification?
I can tell you this. You are talking about FCDA certification. I've just told you, when that estate was built, the people in charge of the certification were AMAC. They gave the approval, they allocated the land and gave appropriate approval. Now, in 2000 I have the letters here because it's important to be scientific with evidence, right? Now, here it is. This letter was written in 2010, addressed to Trademore Holdings, okay? And it was written by a Professor Sonny Abubakar Mashi, who was the coordinator of AMC then for the Honorable Minister of FCT, acknowledging the fact that they approved the building of the estate, they allocated the land, and also mentioning the need to revalidate. Okay, now the developer wrote to development control, asking for revalidation and all of that. Right?
Was it approved?
With the application.
Was it approved?
They never responded. They said their specialist is in Kaduna. They are still waiting, right? And then obviously there are underlying currents I don't want to mention that. As Nigerians, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There were underlying currents regarding the revalidation. And that, maybe that's what the developer doesn't want to get involved in. I don't know, right? But the issue is this. They wrote to them. They also wrote to them another letter reminding them of the need to revalidate. That never happened up to today. And the only reason why this matter is coming up now is because of flooding. If there was no flooding, there would be no issue of legality or no legality, right? Now, I must tell you this. When people come on national TV trying to misdirect the mindset of Nigerians, I think it's a criminal offense because you are lying publicly. The ES was lying publicly.
Yeah, but Dr. Adewale, to be fair,
Yes.
I mean, you just spoke about the documents. We didn't need to see them because you made the point about the need for revalidation. When AMAC gave the approval, said it's subject to revalidation, and that revalidation to date has not been done. Right. So it's fair to say that based on the submission of the executive secretary, that he is right. There is no government validation as far as Trademore Estate is concerned.
Okay, can I tell you this? You said he's right. How is it right? When it is your responsibility to revalidate, and we, as developer, he has written to you to say, okay, we want to revalidate. Can you let's get on the
pending
process.
that revalidation, he is right that right now there is no certification as far as Trademore is concerned.
15 years later, he's not right. He should not be in that seat right now. He should be sacked.
All right.
He's not right. It can't be right.
All right.
Because as far as I'm concerned,
Do you understand their motivation for not revalidating?
do I understand the motivation?
Right. Is it because they have classified that area as a danger zone? That's why they cannot revalidate?
That's incorrect. That was just a preposterous pronouncement that he only made recently. He never said that before. You called somewhere a danger zone. You didn't have the audacity to even go into that place and check what is happening. He doesn't have an idea what is going on there. He got to the gate, and then there was a bit of rain trying to fall. He ran away with his 20 Lexus Jeeps.
All right.
And then he said it's a disaster zone.
All right,
He never had a clue what's going on there.
Okay, he's not here to respond to some of these things, but we would like you now to, as we're running out of time, try to make us understand what, as you said, a flood expert yourself have concluded is the alternative to this whole idea of demolition.
Okay, the alternative is this. Once all the floods coming into Trademore are dealt with from the source, and then also exiting Trademore, there are other estates bang on the waterway, causing water to flow back. Then not only that, the flood goes into the 3 cells under the 10-laner, which is the express road, right, the airport road. Now, which is grossly inadequate to take the volume of water coming. Once all those are addressed, there'll be no flooding in Trademore again.
So you're talking canals, drainages?
Yes.
But
Now,
you're also talking demolition, but not in Trademore.
demolition
Because
is not
you're saying some other estates have developed banged on the flood path.
Yes.
It means they have to go.
Yes, I'm only talking about Trademore. But Trademore cannot demolish those estates.
I get you, but what you are saying is some other estates have to go to open up the waterway.
Absolutely. Some other estates have to be demolished.
Do the estate residents in those places agree with some of these propositions?
It's not a question of agreement. Do you know what is happening here? It's a shame because Trademore Estate is seen as mass housing. So it's supposed to be for ordinary people, right? Yes, we're very ordinary, but we're not uneducated, if you know what I mean. We're very ordinary. Those other estates are massive estates that even development control are afraid to go in there. They are unable to go there and mark those houses, even after it's been pointed out to them from our inspection. If you know what I'm saying, all they want to look at is Trademore. The question is, why Trademore? Why don't you deal with the problem? Like I say to them, you've got headache. When you go to a doctor, he can give you paracetamol and the headache will subside. But the issue is that he needs to find why the headache. And that's what you deal with.
Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, we can't probe any further, at least at the moment. But I think something tells me that we're going to circle back to this conversation in no distant time.
And you can be sure that we have not heard the last of this. Time is not exactly our friends. There are people lined up to feed into this conversation. I therefore want to thank Dr. Engineer Otumba. I hope I'm not leaving out anyone, so I don't have to apologize again, Adewale, for finding time to be here in the face of other equally important engagement lined up for you this morning. Thank you very much for sharing this perspective with us, and I hope that when we come calling again in a bid to reach the root of this problem, you will be available to continue to share your perspective with us.
Very much so. Thank you for having me, and I will encourage you to invite all the agencies. Let us come before Nigerians and discuss this.
We will do that.
So
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again. We will take another short breather. When we return, the conversation continue. Please stay with us. All right, welcome back, and still discussing flood. This morning we have the Director General of the FCT Management Agency, Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, Dr. Abbas Idris, to tell us their efforts to contain the flood and the management of other emergencies in the Federal Capital Territory. I want to welcome you to Trust TV Studios. I was just joking with you on the background. I needed to know your relationship with Senator Namdas. The semblance is out of this world. But talking seriously, I'm sure you listened to our guest in the studio before you came in. Absolutely. Talk about what the ravaging effect of flood at just one section of the FCT. I'm sure there are so many other places where these emergencies have become a matter of public discourse. And I mean, we continue to get from the national, the hydrology headquarters, we continue to get predictions of how this flood, the one for this year, is going to be worse than what we even saw last year, with about 173 local government thereabout set to come directly under the path of these predictions in this year. What exactly is the projection for FCT beyond what we are seeing right now? What should we be worried? What's your agency doing to first of all sensitize people about what's coming and efforts at ameliorating the consequence of this flood?
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. But FCT Emergency Management Agency has been on and very proactive, to say that, because what we do is we don't wait for the rainy season, but we wait for the cessation of the rainfall. As soon as the cessation takes place, we now go around. We have already taken the hazard mapping of the entire FCT, so we know what is in so district and other districts, the hazard in all the districts of the FCT. And we also did the the VCA, vulnerability and capacity assessment of the residents of that community or district. So what we do, we know areas that are prone to flooding based on our hazard mapping. And we also know the areas that are flood to other hazards. So we don't stress ourselves, but we segment ourselves and make sure that when there is any early warning, when we receive early warning from NIMED, we concentrate. Once they show to us that there's going to be flooding and it's going to affect FCT, and our prediction also will now look at the indices and say if there is going to be flooding, it could be District A or Community B. So we now focus ourselves there and ensure that our responders are very close by to give response. And that is why immediately it happens, you'll see our team there. So having done that, we also have to ensure that we strengthen our collaborations and synergy with other relevant agencies because it is necessary. We can't do it alone. So we make sure that we call them and dust our response plan. I forgot to tell you, our main map, compass is the response plan because, and we have to call all the agencies together and say, okay, let's do our response plan for the year. And this is based on this prediction. What do you think you can be able to offer, and then the capacity you have. So where the gaps are, we now look for how to make it up to make sure that there is not.
Doctor, what do you say to people who say that we have seen very little from FEMA over the course of the past 2 weeks? Trademore being the case in point, for instance, what have you done for the residents who are the receiving end of this flood disaster, for instance? And if you can go into the details, for instance, what sort of emergency services are you offering? What sort of intervention have you provided? And what's more to come as far as the projections are concerned?
Well, I know we can't get praises from all these communities, but if FEMA is not there, who was there? Let them tell you.
Now, most people
we are the first responders, and apart from us, nobody go for any response in this city and beyond the city. And let me tell you, within their own community also, we have our responders because we have volunteers that we have trained, especially the divers, which we have trained. And we have other volunteers who are on the other segments of the risk also. They are also there. So if we are not there, it means there was no response at all in the FCT.
Okay, but there's something I would like to understand. You do these mappings, and in other words, you have a more comprehensive look at the incidents,
yes.
which also presupposes that you can recommend something that can be a more lasting solutions to situations, for instance, where there are blockage,
absolutely,
the part of flood.
Absolutely.
So what exactly is happening with Trademore that year in, year out, we continue to see the same thing without any apparent move to solve that
the problem of Trademore is that it's just sitting on the waterway. It is just sitting on the waterway. There is no solution that you can give except if you are going to do underground to bypass the water under the estate to pass through the other district.
You're saying that you can't redirect the water. There's no way you can create canals.
You know, Abuja is well planned, and all those waterways have been is there in the master
development plan, right.
in the master plan. So whatever effort you try to do to divert it is going to affect another community. So if they have said this is the roadmap, this is the way. The roadway, I mean the waterway that will pass, and you know all the waters from FCT goes to River Gurara to discharge before it gets to River Niger. So if you are diverting it, where are you taking it to? You want to go around and then take it to another state before it gets to River Gurara. We have to face the reality. If you are going to be in Abuja, you must respect the master plan in building and whatever you are doing. And that is what we are saying. And if you don't do that, definitely you are violating the master plan. That is one offense. 2, environmental laws, you are violating it. Once you build on the waterways, you are violating the environmental laws. So, and if somebody died, definitely we say we should start prosecuting. And look at the services we are given, and yet some people are saying we don't. If Trademore will say they have not seen FEMA relevant, giving them all the kind of advice and giving them the early warning, because as soon as we receive the early warning and we go there, and if we know that it's going to be flooding from the upper side of the FCT, we definitely know that it's going to affect the Trademore, and we go there. We station our responders to ensure that nobody lost a life, and there has never been any loss of life from the residents of the Trademore, except visitors.
Right. I mean, all the same, it's still a loss of life, and it's still regrettable. But what do you say to people who, in terms of scale, for instance, talk about what FEMA is doing, and it being a drop in the ocean? Because if you look at the scale of the problem, right, and you look at the scale of the solution or the intervention, the scale of the problem outweighs whatever it is that FEMA is doing. Because it's fair to say that there are a lot of people that are still licking their wounds right now, counting their losses, as far as the situation with the flooding is concerned. What can you tell us about how you're trying to scale up some of these services as well as interventions, especially when it comes to evacuating people, for instance? Because right now what we have doing, you talk about the response team, the response system that you have put in place. But a lot of it could be averted, especially with NIMET predictions. Your national body has also predicted it, 14 states, 173 local governments to be affected. So we know this beforehand, that this is what's likely going to happen based on the forecast. But then again, why aren't we able to come up with a system that allows people to evacuate their homes for some time and then makes it easier for you to salvage the situation?
That is exactly what we advise the residents of the Trademore.
Yeah, but you're just telling people to move out without any alternative.
No. They didn't even give room for okay, you ask us to evacuate. How do we go? Where do we go? Their own is always on the defensive. And we, as our own role as FEMA, we are making sure that we prevent disaster from happening. If we can't, we mitigate it. So we don't have anything to do with whether you own this or you don't own this. What we are protecting lives and properties.
I'm sure, Doctor, you would appreciate where they are coming from. It's a difficult situation for everybody, economically, that is. Some persons have invested their entire life savings into those kind of structure. Is there no better way we can, and that is in understanding the question of Abdul, is there a better forum, maybe not just FEMA, but an interagency forum with other?
I think they have had that. They had an interaction with the development control, the urban and regional planning, as well as the development and
were your people represented in that
FCD.
meeting?
We?
Yes.
No. We were not there. You know, when they are talking about master plan, they don't invite FEMA. It's only when there is issues of like this, like flooding, that is now FEMA will come in, since our own is just response to protecting lives and property and making sure that people are educated on what to do in terms of environmental hazard and so on and so forth. That is what we are. And we are always on the aspect of protecting the interests of the resident.
All right. So Abdul raised another very important question I want to double down on, and that's the mismatch between the scale of the problem and the level of intervention. Is it a function of funding, personnel, or what exactly should we see so that FEMA becomes something we see regularly and not just when the disasters happen, because there are all kinds of disasters by day?
Yeah, we are everywhere, rainy season and dry season. If there are hazards that occur during the dry season, which we also face, and we also educate people about it. And there are hazards of the rainy season. So what we do, we raise, every agency is crying of funding, adequate funding, because left to us, we should have strategic points in all the cities to reduce our response plans. We should have at least a response center around this area, so that when anything happens, either fire or whatever, we can be able to tell you we'll be there in the next 10 seconds or in the next 10 minutes, and we should be there. So the same thing with others. So, but again, I must commend the synergy that we are having with all the stakeholders. In fact, sometimes before we get there, we already activated our stakeholders, and they are there before us. So that is the essence of the collaboration, and that is the essence of having the roadmap, which is the response plan together.
Yeah, I want to talk about one component of the conversation that is equally very important, which is orientation, and I believe that it's part of your program to embark on these campaigns to enlighten people about the dangers that awaits them, that is just around the corner, but also in terms of managing emergency situations. What are you doing about educating people on what they need to know in managing this situation whenever they find themselves in the emergency situations, for instance? And also there's a question about some of these blocked drainages that also exacerbate the already bad situation. What is FEMA doing in collaboration with other agencies that might likely be responsible directly with evacuating some of these water channels that have been blocked, and vis-a-vis the situation that we have?
Thank you very much. In terms of education or enlightenment or sensitization, that is our strength, because at the moment, as I'm talking to you, we have jingles in 5 languages running for the hazards of the rainy season. And in those languages, they are doing very well. And then we go to the area councils and satellite towns to talk to them directly. We use town criers. And like I said, we have volunteers everywhere from the communities who also speak the language, and we give them. And once we get the early warning from NIMED, we also quickly disseminate this information to our volunteers that, go in and ensure that you tell people, one, most importantly, let them not go to the farm and build on the waterways. We have identified the waterways for them. We have identified the floodplains. And even in the city here, if you go around, you will see our signposts telling you that this place is a flood-prone
Doctor,
area.
I mean, you're a lot older than I am, and I would tell you that a lot of Nigerians are stubborn. It's one thing to drag a horse to the river, it's another thing to force it through.
Exactly.
How effective are these messages in your interaction?
It is.
Do people actually heed your words?
No, some definitely, because it has reduced the risk of death as a result of flooding in the city. Initially, all the deaths that we recorded were because people drive or walk on the water. And now they have stopped doing that, and they are getting educated on that. And even your conscience will not allow you, as you come, you see a signboard telling you don't drive. If you drive, you definitely know that you signed for the distance. And then on the other channels, water channels, the blocked water channels, we have been on the necks of FCDA every day, and I must say that the response is very positive with the current executive secretary. When we say this is a box culvert, change it to river bridge, they quickly do that so that it allows free flow of water.
Dr. Abbas Idris. Dr. Abbas Idris is the Director General of the FCT Emergency Management Agency. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning and providing extra education to Nigerians, especially living in the Federal Capital Territory, on what they need to do and what to watch out for in the places where they live to avoid disaster.
Once again, thank you
for coming.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we wish we had time to continue to drill Dr. Abbas, but this is the much that time will permit us this morning. I hope we have brought some entertainment, some education, and some enlightenment to you, information that are useful to help you enhance your living standard. I am Sunday Michael Ogu. Let's do this again tomorrow.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. We appreciate you for the company. We'll see you again next time. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Good morning.